to discuss the Greeno Road overlay and to order.
And Chairman, thank you. Commissioners, thank you. And the purpose of the work session today is to provide the really first public introduction of a draft Greeno Road overlay district. It is a proposed text amendment to the zoning ordinance that will add another overlay district. There are a few overlay districts in the zoning ordinance at this time, so we're using this time to introduce it. And so for the public's information, this document, the draft of this document, is preserved electronically in the agenda for this meeting. It actually precedes the regular items on the agenda, so that is published. We conducted, prior to last week's city council meeting, we also had the mayors and directors roundtable. I introduced it verbally at that meeting as well, so anyone who's watching who is interested can certainly download that meeting and hear that discussion as well. Didn't have anything to place on the screens, no text, no images, just strictly text, just simply discussing it. We'll begin tonight by explaining the intent, and so for everyone here, you'll see on the screen, and we provide a basic description that this proposed overlay would begin. This overlay would begin at Dale Drive, terminate at Battles Road, consist of 400 feet west and 400 feet east of the center line of Greeno Road, which is US Highway 98 passing through Fairhope. This would apply to the areas within the corporate limits of the city of Fairhope. Also, any subsequent annexations into the city of Fairhope that fall within that area described would also fall under the Greeno Road district, Greeno Road overlay district. It's a bit small text, but what I'll read for everyone is there are the GRD, as we'll call it, includes districts within the overlay, beginning with a northern edge district from Dale Drive to South Drive, a North Village Center that falls along Parker Road, approximately where the Publix store is located now. That would be from South Drive to State Highway 104. Then a village center, another village center, the Fairhope Avenue Village Center, and then a Southern Edge District. And then, my apologies, I missed the Gateway District from Highway 104 down to Edwards Avenue, and then picking back up in order, your Village Center from Edwards Avenue to Morphy Avenue, and then your Southern Edge District from Morphy Avenue to Battles Road. There's some general language about some of the intent of this overlay, and it's a bit hard to see on your screen, so my apologies for that. This is a draft legal description. You'll notice at the bottom it says to be updated. And commissioners, if you will indulge me just a moment, I want to flip to the City of Fairhope map viewer to show you why this legal description will be modified when we're more solidified. If you can indulge me just a moment. So what I have here is the City of Fairhope map viewer. And so if y'all will give me just a moment and see if I can drag this up to your monitors. All right. Now here's the tricky part. So I just closed it out. Okay. Maybe that's not going to work very well for this meeting. I'll tell you what we'll do, rather than spending a lot of time on that, I'll just verbalize what I was attempting to show you. Because these are monitors, it's a little difficult to control it from here, so I won't waste a bunch of time trying to bring that back up. But staff understands that Dale Drive is right on the edge of Daphne, and there is some slight overlap that we've discovered between Daphne's ETJ and Fairhope's ETJ. When we edit this location in size, we will take that into account. There are areas zoned by Baldwin County, areas zoned by Daphne, and areas in Fairhope's ETJ and areas in Daphne's ETJ that abut one another. We'll make certain that we properly reflect this overlay in that legal description when we get ready to adopt a document. So applicability. Essentially, what I said earlier, this applies to all new construction, demolition, Class 3 renovations, sidewalks, uses, private improvements, landscape alterations of any kind occurring within the overlay zones. The overlay zones overlays the underlying zoning regulations, so however it's zoned is still there. The zoning regulations contained within the City of Fairhope zoning ordinance shall apply unless preempted by this overlay. Where a conflict exists, with the underlying zoning regulations, the overlay shall prevail. Very important here, existing buildings and structures that do not conform to the requirements of this overlay may be occupied, operated, repaired, receive Class 1 and 2 renovations, or otherwise continue in their existing non-conforming state unless demolished or rebuilt. Single-family structures occurring within this overlay at the time of the establishment may utilize the nonconformities within the zoning ordinance as they are right now. We'll also note that appeals and variances will follow the same procedure through the Board of Adjustments. Now, as far as allowable uses in general, in the final document, this will be where the use table is seen. For now, we've labeled it Table X just as a placeholder. But what we've done here for the purposes of not only the document you've seen, but to be able to show it on the screen, this is the use table in its current draft form, divided up across a few slides, and I'll flip through it quickly and then go back if we need to stop and answer questions. Now, you'll notice on the first slide here for dwellings and civic uses, the dots, the black dots, are allowable by right. If it's a black dot, you can do it. If it is a circle, that is a use that must be appealed to the Zoning Board of Adjustments. If you, in the case of this file right here, you'll notice there are rectangles. In your document, in your packet, it's shown as an epsilon. And in the case here, converting the document to an image and putting in a slide changed that. So we'll show you here office and retail, again, same nomenclature. Allowable by right, allowable upon appeal, allowable with special conditions. The special conditions are in the zoning ordinance in this draft document, which we will get to shortly. Here you'll notice the various service usage types as well as manufacturing and rural. It does, at this stage of draft, make heavy use of the Board of Adjustments use approval process, as well as heavy use of the conditional use.
But just to be, can I interrupt?
Yes, ma'am, Commissioners. Taking a break will be very beneficial for me, so if you please interrupt me and ask questions.
Okay, I'll let you take a sip of water. Just to be clear, so the conditional uses, if they meet those conditions, then there is no separate hearing. They just meet
That's
the
correct.
conditions, and it becomes
That's-
essentially a filled-in circle.
That's correct. If so the conditional uses are an administrative level review that would be applicable in many cases to a building permit, which we do that right now anyway. The building department staff, if they receive a building permit application and it appears there is a zoning matter that requires review, they automatically bring it to us for review. So that would certainly continue on then during this process. And so, Commissioners, what will, and at any point stop me and we can go back to other slides, we'll begin the special conditions for uses, which on the slides are the hollow rectangles, are epsilons in your document. So the following special conditions shall apply to all applicable uses within the overlay. The special conditions are in addition to the generally applicable standards, and so forth and so on. Now, general, applying to all districts within the GRD. So in addition to the requirements of the signage ordinance, the following shall apply as well. Backlit and illuminated plastic signs would be prohibited. Neon signs would be prohibited. Video boards would be prohibited. Also, the requirement for a mandatory site plan review described in applicability would go through in the various construction projects falling under here, under the applicability that we saw earlier. The site plan review process shall be completed prior to approval of a building permit and land disturbance permit. Also, the landscape plan in compliance with the landscape ordinance should be submitted concurrently with a mandatory site plan review, but that would be an administrative review by staff. But that would be a concurrent, so that it would be a concurrent review on the administrative level to make certain that they are coordinated, that the landscape is coordinated with the site plan. And the last bullet point that you'll see right here, this is a placeholder. In addition to the requirements of Ordinance 1444, which is your tree and landscape ordinance, the landscape plan shall comply with figures X through X below. Right now, we've engaged Christian Proyas, landscape architect, to prepare the various illustrations that will go in this document. Those are being prepared right now. This is a placeholder for those illustrations. What we wanted to accomplish today is go over text and content and requirements, and then the next time we bring this document before this commission, have those illustrations available for your review. So we'll begin with the Northern Edge District. And Commissioners, I do not intend to go through everything line by line. What I want to do here is, because you'll see there is some repetition as necessary to make the overlay work. So I'll try to focus on some of the things that are unique to each of the districts, beginning with the Northern Edge District. You'll notice one of the issues that we'd heard about during the visual preference survey, and we've heard just in general correspondence, prohibiting standalone ice vending machines, standalone automated teller machines, car wash facilities, both automated and self-serve, prohibiting those. Prohibiting buildings with only flat roofs. However, a building containing a flat roof that's combined with any of the various roofing types to make it more architecturally appealing would certainly be allowable and would be reviewed during that site plan review process. Another issue that we've grappled with a great deal in the past are the different types of clinics. So we wanted to clarify some of the uses within that, create that use category and clarify it. And so we fit it in here, and it would appear in the Northern Edge District. You'll see, I'm sorry, sir, go ahead.
When you say clinics, that wouldn't be the same as a doctor's office?
Yes, sir, basically medical facilities. And what we've noticed, if you'll notice the two bullet points there below, actually the laboratory, the therapy, and the counseling, is that currently the zoning ordinance really does not reflect those uses. And so that is a use that we are seeing requested through the business license process.
So in other words, a orthopedics office will be allowed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That's
So,
not clear with those descriptions. I mean, that's therapy, counseling, and I wouldn't look at that and think that there was a specialized doctor's office.
well, what we're trying to do here is create the umbrella category. And again, that is the great thing about having a document for editing. We can get feedback and get feedback and receive edits. Now, and Emily may have a comment because she's dealt with this in reviewing the business licenses. So Emily, if you can interject, please.
Yes, this would be in addition to the description that is already in our zoning ordinance.
Got it.
Okay,
Yes.
that makes more sense.
But currently, in our zoning ordinance, these are
Not described.
lacking a
Right.
little
Yes.
bit of definition.
Okay,
So-
perfect. I misunderstood that.
Yes, sir.
I
So,
also wanted just a little more clarification about the flat roofs, because it doesn't say, I mean, there's lots of different ways to have a flat roof. And
Correct.
there's parapets all over downtown that are quite attractive. You can tack a mansard roof onto
Mhm.
a cheap metal building, and it can be quite unattractive. So I was a little, there's no mention of the parapet. You're talking about the roof structure, but it doesn't say
Mm.
anything about a parapet. By a flat roof, would that exclude a building that has a parapet, like most of our downtown?
and I think the best answer to that is, at this stage of where we are right now, editing this document, is that we have the opportunity to improve the document, one, but also is that I think that the mandatory site plan review, the mandatory site plan review process will be very beneficial here in order to evaluate the proposed development, evaluate the structure, and get their take on what it is they're hoping to accomplish and what they're intending to show. But
we
again,
don't want our-
this is a first draft of a document. We can improve it, absolutely.
Okay, I think we don't want our site plan review to turn into an architectural design review board.
Correct, and Commissioner, I appreciate that comment because, and I think that's probably why I was very general with the writing of that particular point as well, because we don't have architectural review. So we can certainly improve it, make the wording better without launching into and forcing upon an architectural review that doesn't exist. And Commissioners, I have thrown in some components of the visual preference study, a few of them here and there, just to reiterate the really the origin of the process for which we're here today. The visual preference study was very, very telling in some of the responses that we received. And so in this comparison right here, you'll notice the illuminated backlit sign. You'll notice the green are the affirmative responses, the blue are the negative responses from those taking that survey. You'll notice that the illuminated plastic sign on the left is more negative than positive, but I thought it was interesting to see the contrasting sign on the right, how overwhelmingly positive that was in response to the illuminated sign. And so again, that the text you're seeing today is based upon evaluating the visual preference survey. So we'll talk about the general personal services in the Edge District, and not to read every line of this, but just to emphasize that in the Northern Edge District, the pharmacy, drugstore, that would have a prohibited drive-through. Okay. And so here we have a technical specification for what a drive-through in a bank, how that would operate. Some technical specifications that we've borrowed from researching other areas. Flip through here, and so Commissioners, notice here, I just wanted to show some negative responses to single-use, single-tenant buildings that we saw in the visual preference survey. The Southern Edge District is more automobile-oriented, and so Commissioners, what I wanted to emphasize here for the public here is that we have criteria for allowing automobile-oriented uses, such as automobile repair facilities and convenience stores, but the buffer zone requirements are enforced, and wanted to show a typical fuel station that received a great deal of negative response versus this development here that received a great deal of positive response to the visual preference survey. Picking back up where we were on the Southern Edge District on convenience stores, and again, for the sake of time, what I'll emphasize here is that we found through research some technical standards to prevent light pollution as much as possible, and also to make certain that the buildings and structures in a convenience store where they're allowed are muted and more appropriate, but the main thing is to avoid light pollution into residential areas. Also, if there is a car wash with a convenience store in that Southern Edge District, there are some technical specifications for a car wash as well as an automobile service station, and it cross-references convenience store if that use appears to become a convenience store. The
Hey, wait,
gateway, I'm
wait.
sorry.
Back up a couple of slides.
Yes,
Go
sir.
back. Go back one more. One more. No. Anyway, it had to do with banks. What's the difference? Tell me what the theory is and the difference between the pharmacy / drugstore with a drive-through, one single lane drive-through approved, and a bank. I mean, there are only about 842 banks on Greeno Road currently.
Yes, sir. And so, Commissioner, Commissioners, the theory behind that is that those are going to be more regimented in a time span for their use, though it's possible someone could use the after-hour deposit box. Most banks and most heavy traffic activities are going to occur during the day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So there's potentially and probably statistically less intrusion by operating one of those types of facilities after hours.
Depending on the location of it as it relates to the structure itself, who would it infringe on with the way the district is designed?
Well,
You're talking about somebody that's
Neighbors
200,
behind
200 feet 300 feet behind you?
Well, the idea is, and that's combined with, and of course, we're going a little quickly, but combined with the visual screening required by the landscape ordinance. The idea here is any residences that may be nearby to try to protect them as much as possible. But, Commissioners, again, that's great commentary, and certainly we can evaluate that further.
I think
As
some
a
of it's
first
also
rollout.
I
I'm
think
sorry?
some of it's also the, drive-throughs, you want visibility and so much more asphalt, and that's one of the things we're trying to get, more green and less asphalt. But
We talking about with a drive up?
Yeah, like when you see the bank with the 5 drive-throughs on the right and the big parking in front.
Oh, I understand. My question had to do with the bank versus the pharmacy.
Why are we
Correct.
going more with the bank? And
And I think the intrusion and the intensity of use is less with a bank because a pharmacy, their operating hours may be much later into the night where vehicles will be driving through and collecting prescriptions after hours, whereas generally a bank's normal operating hours would conclude at 5 p.m.
We probably ought to save the discussion since it's 5.
Yes, sir. And so Commissioners, and for the sake of time, I wanted to just show you that we have various, these are the kind of the cliff notes that are preserved within this slideshow. And so I am happy to convert this to an Adobe document, email it to each of you.
that would be great.
Because it does act as kind of a cliff notes to the overlay. And then I'll work with Emily to determine a way to preserve this online for anyone wishing to download it and look at it as well.
Emily, could you
Well, like,
send this
that was
out
a-
to that email list that you have?
Okay.
That way, a lot of the people in the alpha audience will get it, people can pass it along to each other.
And Chairman, Commissioners, I'll mention very briefly, and then we'll move on to the regular meeting. We have this item on the agenda as a regular meeting item, so I have some super brief comments we'll say right there, and then we can move on to the regular meeting when the chairman is ready to move on.